Welcome to the Smart Business Revolution.
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 You want a revolution?
You say you want a revolution?
Revolution. The revolution.
It's going on right now.
Welcome to The Revolution, the Smart Business Revolution podcast, where we ask today's most successful entrepreneurs to share the tools and strategies they use to build relationships and connections to grow their revenue. Now, your host for The Revolution, John Corcoran.
All right, welcome everyone. John Corcoran here, the host of the Smart Business Revolution podcast. You know, each week I talk to, actually twice a week, I talk to really inspirational and interesting CEOs, founders, and entrepreneurs, all kinds of companies and organizations like YPO, EO, Activation Blizzard, Lending Tree, OpenTable, Axe Software. I'm also the co-founder of Rise 25, where we help connect B2B business owners to their ideal prospects. And, you know, I wanted to introduce today's guest, an interesting guy who I connected with through LinkedIn. His name is Dwain Farley, and Dwain has got a very interesting background, 30 plus years of entrepreneurship and different levels. And especially at this point in time, we're recording this in July of 2020 with the coronavirus pandemic continuing to unfold. I thought that it'd be really valuable to have some sage, educated, seasoned entrepreneurs to come on the show and share some of their stories, not just their own stories, but also working with other founders as well. And he is also currently a Vistage Chair, which is a great organization of peer-to-peer roundtables for CEOs. So we're going to dive into that in a moment. But first, before I get into that, I want to also mention a few other Vistage Chairs I've had on the show recently. Matthew Griffiths from London, England, told the story of a company he's involved in, which is kind of like an escape room for entrepreneurs. Really cool. So check out that episode. Tanya Twitchell, also Vistage Chair from Las Vegas. She told the story of 5 family members who died in a short period of time and how that inspired her to give back. In a moment, we're going to hear Dwain's personal story of what inspired him into entrepreneurship. And then also check out the episode with Carl Arnold from San Francisco, who built a hospitality business to over $100 million and now is also a Vistage Chair. Really great story from him as well. But first, before we get into all that, this episode is brought to you by Rise 25 Media. And at Rise 25, we help B2B businesses to get clients, referrals, and strategic partnerships with done-for-you podcasts and content marketing. And if you're listening to this and you've ever thought, should I do a podcast as well as listening to one? Well, we say yes. And we specialize in helping you to get that done. So if you have a B2B business with a high client lifetime value, this will be one of the most valuable assets. We guarantee it. So to learn more, go to rise25media.com, or you can also email us at support@rise25media.com. All right, Dwain. So I'm really excited to have you here today. And you've got an amazing story. So at 17 years old, you had an accident, which shaped your life for the rest of your life, and also, in a way, guided your life course into entrepreneurship. So tell us what happened during that accident.
Well, John, thank you very much. Appreciate you having me on today. Exciting to be here. Like you said, when I was 17 in high school, a friend of mine and not necessarily our girlfriends, just some friends from work, were out one Saturday night, goofing off, doing silly things that 17-year-olds do. I end up falling backwards head first down about 30 feet off a cliff. On the way down, caught a tree or two, and ended up landing fundamentally on my neck, they said, but took off my ears. They had to take a sew back on. They said if it hadn't been for the heavy jacket I was wearing, it was in November of '81, and had it not been for the jacket I was wearing, which had a big kind of furry collar, they said I probably would have broken my neck. And so I ended up breaking my back, thoracic 5/6, and so ended up in rehab for almost 4 months. So came back. So I actually came down to Dallas, which is where I am now, down to Baylor Rehab Unit, which had just opened a spinal cord injury rehabilitation hospital. And so again, spent about 4 months there, came back in, I guess, February or March. So yeah, very interesting experience. You know, people ask me what that was like. And when they told me likely as not, I wasn't going to walk again. And so I was paralyzed from about my chest down. I don't know that really made much sense. I mean, I was 17 years old, so I hadn't quite figured out what exactly that meant. But anyway, I got down here to Baylor. They actually flew me down here on a Lear jet from Northwest Arkansas, which was quite an experience because I was flat on my back when I did it. But I get here and there's a whole different environment. I walk in, or I roll in on a stretcher for my first day of therapy, and there's gunshot victims there. There are motorcycle victims. I mean, everything from spinal cord injuries to neck injuries to quadriplegics to it was just, for someone who's 17 years old, never seen anything like this. It was just quite honestly, I mean, I looked around and I remember having a thought, compared to everyone else here, I'm in really good shape. And so, yeah, that was kind of a life-changing moment for me. It was an amazing thing. And so, the vast majority of people there were either gunshot or motorcycle accidents.
And how did you pick yourself back up, at 17 years old and not get dejected, not get depressed about your life? Or did you go through a period of depression?
That was the answer is, it took me about a year after the accident to really figure out the situation I was in. And so, there was a period of depression there. I went through 2 or 3 years there where, there was just a lot of uncertainty in my head that I had to work through. And part of that was trying to go to school and get through high school and then on to college. Went to a technical college up there in Northwest Arkansas. I don't even think it's still there anymore. But it was 2, 3, 4 years of just of a lot of difficulty.
Yeah.
Finally pulled myself out of that, graduated, and then it's kind of like, okay, what do I do now? And thankfully there were some people that I knew that allowed me to come in, and what I had studied was PCs, and I had a passion for that. I mean, in the sense that they were new. I mean, IBM had introduced their IBM XT in '81, so now we're 3, 4 years down the road there. It's like, wow, these are starting to proliferate a little bit. I managed to cobble together enough money to buy an Apple IIe PC, if anybody remembers that.
I do. My parents had one. Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
Hey, this was a good one. I had 2 floppy disk drives on this, so I mean, I was really,
wow, that's pretty high tech
now.
Yeah.
Right. I was really high tech. So anyway, put an ad in the paper and said, hey, anybody who needs any help using their PC, give me a phone call. And so like 3 or 4 people called me, and the key to being an entrepreneur, I've come to find out, is put yourself out there, have an ask, here's what I can do. Can I do it for you? And then keep following up. What else do you want to do? What else do you want to do? And so that's what I did, and then I got one referral to another referral, then started putting together PCs in my bedroom, and selling those. And then,
and this is why you're in college, you're doing all this?
Had graduated from college.
Okay.
And so the next 2, 3 years,
and you actually said that you think that your injury made you feel that you weren't sure who was going to hire you. So did that inspire your decision to go kind of work for yourself and just put something together?
Well, it's kind of, as I came out of school, it's like, okay, what am I going to do? Do I go look for a job? Is anybody going to hire me? I mean, and then again, it was like, well, why don't I just put an ad in the paper and see if there's anybody who has the need for my skill set? Okay. Didn't have a great skill set. I mean, just got out of school, had some really good PC-based skills that, quite frankly, not a lot of people did. So I was kind of in the right place at the right time. And again, just kind of put myself out there and said, hey, who needs help at home or in your business, whatever. And some people reached out.
What were attitudes like back then, especially compared to now, to people that were in a wheelchair? And do you feel that, I think that there's been more accommodations now. There's more of an attitude that, I believe, but maybe you correct me if I'm wrong, that, we want people that have suffered some kind of disability to continue to be fruitful and contributing members to society. But what was it like 40 years ago?
Honestly, and this may be a little bit hard to believe, I didn't really think about it a lot. I mean, once I kind of got past the initial couple of years of, getting through school, that was an accomplishment. It's kind of like, okay, I've got to eat. I've got to, my parents weren't wealthy. And so it was kind of like I was out here to do something. Actually, I didn't. At some point, I came to the conclusion very shortly after getting out of school that, the wheelchair's how to get around. It's not who I am. And so, believe it or not, I guess people responded to that. I don't know that was part of their thinking. Now, the more clients I attracted, the more I had to become cognizant of where they were, physically. I mean, this was
whether
not
you could
that
get
long
there
after ADA.
Yeah.
And so there were still a lot of places that didn't have bathrooms, that still had steps. I had to be real careful as I started to work for some of the manufacturing companies there in Northwest Arkansas, that, a lot of them didn't have an accessible entrance. And so now that changed pretty quickly, but for the first 5 years or so, no, I had to be cognizant that I had to ask,
to think
is
about
there a way I can get in? Yeah, exactly. I had to think about it.
Yeah. And were you so you're up in Northwest Arkansas. Were you near Walmart in Bentonville?
As a matter of fact, yeah. 4 or 5 years into my business, we started doing a lot of work, a lot of programming for Walmart. Our customers were, Walmart, Tyson.
Because a lot of the industry in that area, if it's not for Walmart, it's for other companies that are around Walmart. I believe Walmart for many years had a policy that any of their suppliers had to have an office in Bentonville or around Bentonville.
Yeah, I mean, that came a little bit later. That is true. But between J.B. Hunt and Tyson and Walmart, those are kind of the big three. And some of them, in some cases, they fed off of each other. In some cases, not. But those were clients in some shape or form as we went along. Over the years.
Yeah. You're a parent. I've got 4 kids. You've got 7. So clearly I got to catch up here. But how have you approached your kids, and talking to them about, your circumstance, your accident, because I look at my kids sometimes, and sometimes it's amazing. Sometimes they feel so sorry for themselves, or they fixate on something that, they got the raw end of the deal or something like that. And I just want to be like, you don't know how good you have it, So how do those conversations go for you, or does it even come into the conversation?
Well, it does. A little bit about that. Over my wife and I, we've been married 32 years now, and for the first 15 years we didn't have kids, and then we made the decision to go ahead and adopt, and we decided to adopt internationally. So all of our children are from China. Wow. And so for the last almost 20 years, that's what we've been doing. So a majority of those children have some special need of some sort. Wow. And so to kind of answer your question directly, the conversation that we have is, look, the disability, whatever that may be, and by the way, the definition of disability for us and for China are a little bit different, okay? But regardless, that's not allowed to stand in your way. You've got to go out there and you've got to use, whatever tools and talent you've been given by God and do something with them, so do something productive. And so they've all responded very well to that. I'm just tremendously proud of all my kids. They've just done great.
Wow. I can't imagine how, building a business is one thing, but also doing it while also adopting 7 kids over 15 years. That's just insane. That's like every other year you're going and picking up a new kid.
Yeah, and they all got, as we went along, they kept getting a little bit older. When we adopted our first child, Leah, she was about 18 months. We decided we'd skip the first year, for a lot of different reasons.
Yeah. Okay.
But then as we kind of went along, we brought our latest child home, whose name is Benson, in 2015, and he was 6 or 5, I guess. So kind of got a little bit older as we went along, and so now the age range distribution has worked out very, very well.
Yeah. So let's go back to, you're building up this company in Arkansas. You're hiring people. It's getting larger. And eventually you hit a point where you kind of outgrow your market. Is that fair to say? Because eventually you decide to go down to Dallas. When does that happen?
I guess that would have happened in maybe 95. Yeah, somewhere thereabouts. It was a progression. We were building some PCs and then doing some programming on PCs, installing accounting systems. I mean, again, the customers kept getting bigger. The kinds of implementations I was doing were getting bigger. Started hiring some people, some technicians, and then some programmers, and then some systems analysts. And the size and complexity of the systems started to morph. And eventually, we started doing automated data collection systems. Reading barcodes and collecting that kind of data and doing something with it. And really, really needed to hire talented programmers. And, between Walmart and JB Hunt and Tyson and First Brands and some of the other companies around there, it was a very small, there was a lot of,
pool.
Yeah. We were draining the talent pool in a big hurry.
Okay.
And so
how big were you? How many people were working for you when you go to Dallas?
I think we were 40 plus.
Okay.
Somewhere thereabouts. And so the vast majority of those were technicians and programmers. Okay. And again, we couldn't find enough people. Although I was paying higher wages, most of the folks coming out of the University of Arkansas, they wanted to have something like a Walmart or a Tyson on their resumes. So it wasn't impossible, but it was just we couldn't grow. I mean, we literally had more business than we had people to do the work.
Right.
And so,
and it was a different time. You couldn't hire people abroad. You couldn't hire programmers abroad or anything at this time.
Well, that's true. And I mean, we were putting ads in St. Louis and Kansas City and Tulsa. I mean, literally, we were willing to move people in if we had to. It just couldn't make that work. And again, just not enough. So one day we just sit down, my executive team and I, and we said, look, we got to do something. How does Dallas sound? And they said, well, okay. So that's what we did. We just moved the company lock, stock, and barrel to North Dallas. And
was there any significance or rationale behind the fact that you had done your rehab there?
No, actually, my dad was down here in Dallas, and my grandmother was down here in Dallas. So I knew something about Dallas. We had 5 universities to pull from. That was very attractive to me. We had a lot of clients here in Dallas. In fact, not our largest clients, but a significant number of them were down here. I had some good sales resources down here in Dallas, so it was just kind of the most natural place to go.
Got it. Okay. And did you experience any? When companies are scaling up, they sit in certain spots where they plateau. Did you experience that as you were growing?
Absolutely.
And where were they? What was the level? Was it $1 million, $5 million? What was the point? Do you remember?
Yeah, I mean, at about the time we hit about 10 million, I figured out that, I can't do the work, I can't oversee the work, and I can't manage the growth of the business at the same time. And it's one of the things, as a Vistage Chair, and if people ask me what is the biggest issue that an entrepreneur faces, it's that tipping point. Where do you stop doing the work yourself and start actually managing the resources of the business? Mm-hmm. And so I think I held back the growth of the company a lot because felt like I had to have all the control, all the focus. Every decision had to go through me. And about the time we got to that, $8 or $10 million mark, no, you can't do that anymore. Wow. And I had to make a decision.
That's amazing that you were at 8 or 10 million and you were still so intimately involved.
Well, yes, but the size of the systems we were deploying, could be
big. Okay,
got it. Were much bigger. So it was. Got it. So yeah, you're right. If I was, if I was selling widgets or
Yeah.
individual PCs, you're right. I would have had to make that decision much earlier.
Right.
But as soon as I finally realized, you know what, I can hire somebody to come in who's probably, and I'm a pretty good coder, but I can bring somebody in who can do what I do on the production side a whole lot more efficiently.
Yeah.
And then my job is to grow the business.
Yeah.
That's where we really started to take off. Coming to Dallas and making that kind of mental adjustment in my own head, things really took off.
So tell me more. What was that like?
It was like, you know what? These folks that I brought in, they're going to do well. They may not do it exactly like I do it, but that's okay. It was coming to that realization. You know what? That's okay.
Mm-hmm.
And you know what? After a while, I figured out, you know what? They're actually doing better than I did.
Mm-hmm.
And so then I was able to take and focus on new customers, new markets. You know, that's when we started to look for additional resources in terms of capital, you know, because there were some places I wanted to take the company. It freed up the focus and the vision of the company.
Mm-hmm. And at the same time, I imagine new challenges. So what were those new challenges like, and how did you overcome those, or how did you make sure that you were up to the task?
Lots of some of it was you know, always reading, always learning, you know, trying to figure out what are the best business books. I mean, I knew that there was a lot I didn't know. You know, what do you do between that $10 and $20 million level, and you know, where do I get capital from? You know, how do I manage my receivables? You know, yeah, you can grow at a tremendous pace, but guess what? Your availability of cash goes down.
Mm.
So growth isn't always a great thing, and it's never a good thing when it's not managed. And so having your hand on that throttle and being very careful is where it's at. I mean, that's.
And during this time, were you involved in a Vistage group? Did you have a coach? Did you have a peer group?
I had a really good group of advisors that I had brought in. What I thought was, I ended up spending a lot of time trying to figure out who I needed to talk to, who would have some information that could help me grow my business, help me facilitate the knowledge that I needed to grow the business. That's one of the things that, frankly, I've really enjoyed about Vistage, is that bring this group of talented CEOs and business leaders to other business leaders who are struggling the same way I did. Okay, mm-hmm. I did it the hard way. I didn't have to, but I wasn't looking around for something like a Vistage or EO or whatever, but I should have been, especially in those later years, because this has been so helpful to so many businesses. I would like to have been a part of it.
Yeah. In 1997, your company is acquired by Data Recognition, which is based out of Austin. Was that part of the goal all along? Did it come out of nowhere? Was it a surprise? How did you end up, selling the business?
Well, and I think you'd ask me at some point, you know, who was one of those people that really made a difference in my life, and a guy by the name of Ed Dato. And Ed was the CEO of Data Recognition, DRI, and we'd actually got together at some kind of a forum or something about a year before, and had come back together, had a conversation, and you know, the kind of hardware I was deploying and the kind of hardware he was deploying, two different manufacturers, but put the two companies together, and all of a sudden we had a huge market share here in the Southwest for automated data collection. And so it just made so it was more of a merger than it was an acquisition, but it was two companies coming together. And between the two, he and I worked together really, really well. Mm-hmm. And I don't know, a couple of years after we brought our two companies together, we had some really good growth. That's when Brady stepped in and said, "Hey, we like what you guys are doing. You know, there's a whole component to what we are doing."
And Brady Corporation was the company that then acquired Data Recognition. Okay, got it.
That's
okay,
right.
So then you flipped to an even larger company, and then you're
flipped to a public company out of Milwaukee.
Okay.
You know, they made all the stickers that you put on everything in an industrial setting with barcodes and such. Well, we had all the hardware and software and integration to take and do something with that data that's collected. And that was very, they liked that approach. It gave them an entry into another level of service that they could bring their existing customer base. It was kind of a marriage made in heaven there.
And some longtime entrepreneurs, they really chafe when they are forced into a corporate environment. How was it for you after many years of running your own shop and then working for a company where you got along with the other founder really well? What was it like being in that corporate environment, having to report to a board of directors?
Well, and I think both Ed and I, both of us chafed. We thought they had bought us for a certain reason, and Brady's a great company, and to this day still are. But there were places we wanted to take that division that frankly they just didn't have that division. That's not where they wanted to take it, but they owned it. I mean, it was a cash transaction. It was all theirs to do with what they wanted, and so Ed went ahead and left and went off and do some things that he wanted to do. I stayed and ran it. And, after my non-compete was over, and again, it wasn't anything against the people. It's just, they were morphing off into a different direction. I was seeing a lot of an opportunity with radio frequency data collection. Okay. Instead of just reading stickers, a linear barcode or a 2D barcode, let's take and put an electronic chip in there and read it from a distance.
Yeah. And these are super cool. I saw a demonstration of it at the Retail X conference I was at last summer. And it's tell people a little bit about what RFID is for those who don't know what it is and the advantages of it compared to regular barcodes.
I mean, a barcode, you read it with a laser scanner. What if you could take and put that same data, make it basically a license plate, and put a chip on that same label, and now instead of having to read it in a linear fashion with a laser, now electronically you collect that same data. So now I can do it from inches or feet instead of having to be so close up to the barcode. Well, that opens up all kinds of opportunities. Yeah,
in a warehouse where they can just wave the wand basically at a stack of stuff. Yeah,
exactly.
Cool.
And so how all this came together is between that technology, which was an emerging technology at the time. Then you had Walmart and Target and a lot of other the retailers saying, look, this technology is really interesting. Maybe we can take and have all of our suppliers put RFID tags on their product that Walmart is accepting into the warehouses and have it automatically read. Well, I mean, I saw a tremendous opportunity there. Yeah. And frankly, Brady didn't, and I understand that. That wasn't their wheelhouse. And so I left Brady to open up my next venture, which was basically the same thing I sold to him, but now with more of a focus on RFID.
So this is now 6 years after you sell your business. And before I get into that, Enterprise Information Systems is the name of the new company that you start in 2003. But before I get into that, I imagine, I don't know what the sale price was, but you're probably pretty much set for life at this point. What is driving you at that point? Why not just go sit on a beach and drink a Mai Tai and enjoy yourself at this point?
Mostly it's just, at this point, I was doing some things that were really interesting to me. Okay, yeah, you're right. There wasn't a financial reason. I wasn't looking for a day job. Honestly, wheelchairs and beaches don't mix. And
okay, that's true. Yeah,
there you go. I mean, it's not real functional. But
well, it could be. I mean, it could have been a pool then, a poolside. You can drink a Mai Tai on the pool.
There, okay.
Yeah.
Good point. Again, it wasn't about. It was really about being productive and finding interesting things to do. And to me, the whole idea of taking what we had done and rolling that into something like a new technology like RFID was just fascinating to me. And I had the opportunity. I had the financing.
Sorry. Go ahead.
No, I had the capital to do it, and a lot of the people that had maybe made the transition to Brady Corporation with us, some of them had stayed, some of them had left, but I had a ready pool of people who understood what I was trying to do and how I was trying to do it, and understood the technology. It's like, man, this is a recipe for success.
Was it amicable for the most part with Brady, or when you left, did it suddenly become, oh, now you're our competitor?
Well, it never was. hey, you're our competitor, because I'd ask the question, do you guys want to be in RFID? And there were lots of discussions around that, and said, no, we like the path we're on.
Yeah.
But ultimately, for the first couple of years that I had EIS, we were co-managing several companies like Frito-Lay, which is one of our big customers.
Okay.
And so they were selling the hardware. We were doing all the systems integration and software. I mean, it was a very nice symbiotic relationship there. And again, once we started going into some other areas, and no, it was a good party.
And you kind of follow a similar path. So you run it for 4 years, and then it's acquired by Domino Printing. And again, same question, was that part of the goal? Was that the plan all along, or did the acquisition come out of nowhere?
That particular acquisition kind of came out of nowhere. We were actually one of the, I guess probably the largest systems integrator for RFID in the Southwest. And we had grown very quickly in that 3 or 4 years. Again, everything just kind of fell in place in terms of the right resources, in terms of people, already had capital from the previous acquisition. I mean, it worked out well. Domino came out of they just showed up on our doorstep one day and said, we've seen some of the things that you've done. We've heard about you in the marketplace. They had a very specific focus on serialized track and trace. And I mean, they had a big, I mean, they're into coding and inkjet systems, laser systems, and I mean, huge customer base in beverage and food and pharma, medical devices. I mean, if you got to put a serialized number or code on a product at high speed, those were the guys. Mm-hmm. Well, they needed to back into that. They needed the software and the services and the integration, again, to be able to offer a whole other level of service to their customers. And they saw us as being kind of that conduit, that piece that they could plug in. And so, and they were UK based.
And there must have been some kind of cultural fit, because you spend 4 years there with Domino as CEO of the Americas for them. And during that period of time, there's the financial meltdown, the mortgage meltdown in 2008. You had during your career, there's been different, ups and downs in the economy and recessions. Why do you think that you've been able to survive them, or have there been particular ones that were harder than others? Of course, it's a relevant question given what we're in right now.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that I remember the .com that well. I mean, a lot of it was we tended to be in industries. We were delivering a product that helped companies become more efficient. Well, in a downturn, that's what they're looking for. Yeah. How do we do more with less? And so that's, when you're reading barcodes, when you're collecting data, when you're, especially with RFID, well, that's you're implementing technology that a person doesn't have to do. And so,
so there's some savings in terms of labor costs, which offsets probably the investment of capital they have to spend in order to put a new system in place.
Absolutely. Okay. Now, having said that, both in 9/11 and in 2008, I mean, these are all capital projects. In some cases, $250,000, $500,000, $1 million plus in terms of capital spend for these companies. Mm-hmm. And so, they all tend to take a moment or two of pause, or months of pause, to kind of figure out, okay, well, what's happening here? Yeah. Where they start issuing purchase orders. And so, did that give me some concern? Absolutely. Did I have to tighten up the organization, make some management changes, conserve cash, those kinds of things? Absolutely. Mm. But we weren't as affected just due to the nature of what we were delivering to our clients.
Mm-hmm. And after Domino, you did it looks like, at least from your LinkedIn profile here, it looks like you took a little time off. Is that right?
Yeah, and I enjoyed my time with Domino. It was a lot of fun, going back and forth to the UK. They also have a big sales office, or their presence in the US is in Gurnee, Illinois. So did a lot of travel. And by the time I kind of got to into that 3 or 4 years, I was exhausted. I mean, just tons and tons of travel. And so, I took some time off. Got reconnected with the kids. We did a couple more adoptions through that process. Had a ton of fun. Did a lot of traveling, and then some folks came to me and asked me if I would be interested in getting into a new industry, doing something new, doing cell phone towers and doing 2G, 3G, 4G upgrades. It's like, yeah, that'd be kind of cool.
It's a brand new industry.
Brand new industry, had nothing to do with software development.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a lot of fun. I mean, there was a lot of, you get a lot of the, hey, we don't, they asked me to come in. I was able to put an equity investment into the company and become CEO. And their vision, I mean, I was the minority in that enterprise, but my job was to help build up the company so they could sell it. So this was the first opportunity for me to actually build something up with the vision to sell it.
Right.
And so
even though you'd sold 2 companies before this.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That was never the focus going in.
Right.
But anyway.
And you also step in. This is the first time you step into an existing team. You're not building it up yourself. So how is that different?
Very different. I had to get used to that. It was now building consensus, and with the 2 partners who actually owned more stock than I did.
Mm.
And so it very much was, and they're great guys. I mean, I wouldn't have gotten into it. I wouldn't have invested my money if they weren't really, really good guys, very competent, knew the industry inside and out. What made the difference, and the reason we grew so fast, is that between the 3 of us, I brought in a lot of expertise that was not industry centric. And so, there was a lot of, well, we don't do it that way in the wireless industry, or we don't do that in the telecom or cell tower industry. Well, that's okay, but let's try it anyway. Yeah. And so between the 3 of us, we were able to take and bring some innovation into the company that there weren't a lot of companies doing in this industry. And so again, that came to the attention of a private equity firm who came along 3 or 4 years later, I guess in 2017, and ask us if we would be interested in selling. Here, my takeaway is this: you build a good company, a solid company, good revenues, good profits. You really spend your time focused on culture, and you're not going to have to go out and look for somebody to buy you. People will show up on your doorstep. They'll come looking for you.
And what about that? You mentioned culture. Is there anything you had to do when you stepped into Ontivity, culture-wise, to change or shape the culture or put your stamp on it?
That's a great question. What was different about this industry is that we had lots of small teams of people going out all over North Texas, all over Oklahoma. I mean, so you didn't have an opportunity to, obviously safety was a big issue. You can't send people up 200, 300, 400 feet in the air without being very cognizant of safety and process. And so the answer is, we spent a lot of time talking about culture. We spent a lot of time working with our folks and evolving that culture. Absolutely. Because the last thing we want to do is.
And do you remember any specific examples of ways in which you made deliberate decisions to evolve that culture?
Yeah, I don't know that we particularly cared for. We made a significant investment in our training process. I mean, we built our own training tower. I mean, we built a replica of a cell site right there on our next to our building. I mean, you couldn't tell the difference between this cell site and some cell site anywhere else. I mean, we made that kind of event all the way down to the chain link fence, to the building out beside. I mean, we did all that wiring, and that way we could take and train our people, and they knew that we had their back in terms of safety, in terms of process, in terms of quality. I mean, those were the things that we were willing to invest in, and the employees saw that.
That's cool.
So, we started deploying quality teams, out to the field to make sure that what we delivered to the client was in fact what the client was expecting. And so, just again, a difference in our industry that most of the customers hadn't seen before.
Yeah. There's a great story. I'm trying to remember what book it was in. I think it was in one of Jim Collins' books about the guy who he ended up being Treasury Secretary under George W. Bush in the early 2000s, but he had gone into a steel company and which was struggling. And he said, we're going to put safety first. And everyone said, huh? Like, we're struggling financially. He said, no. First thing, top priority is safety. And that set the cultural tone, and they ended up doing tremendously well financially. I forget the name of the individual who did this, but this was before he'd gone into government. But it sounds like that's kind of a similar story with you, where you said, okay, safety first, everything else flows from there.
And that's absolutely true. I mean, once the employees are confident that management is standing behind them, is got their best interest at heart, and you train them in the process. You've got to train them in quality. You got to train them in safety. It is an exchange of information. Then they, in most cases, will step up, and that's what they did. And I think that was recognized by the private equity firm. And so, again, my partners did a great job. I mean, they had all the intuitive industry knowledge and brought that to bear, and we made a great team.
We're running a little short on time, but you have been involved in Vistage for a couple of years now. What has it been like going through this coronavirus pandemic and in kind of in a different role where you are not in the same company, but you're mentoring founders and executives? What has that been like?
Well, obviously in March, it was deer in the headlights look. That was our first meeting that we were doing via Zoom, and done each meeting each month thereafter. You can see, in April, May, June, everybody's kind of getting their feet underneath them. And what has amazed me is, and we made this statement in March: how do we come out of this process stronger than we went in? So a lot of these folks, a lot of these CEOs have done just that. I mean, they've made the cuts that they've needed to. They've tightened things up. They've focused on cash, and the vast majority have a better cash position now than what they did going into it, for a lot of reasons. But mostly it's been active or proactive management, and I'm just terribly proud of them.
That's great. Well, I want to wrap things up with the question that I always ask. Let's pretend we're at an awards banquet. Dwain, you're receiving an award for lifetime achievement for everything you've done up to this point. And what we all want to know is, who do you thank in addition to, family and friends? Who else, who are the mentors, who are the peers, business partners, who are the coaches, who are the people that you would acknowledge in your remarks?
Obviously, my wife and family. I mean, they've had to put up with a lot in terms of travel and those kinds of things over the years. And the stress, but after that it'd be Ed, and that first partnership that we had that made such a difference. I mean, he was such a great mentor to me. I learned so much from him. To this day I will use Edisms, all those little things, those pithy sayings that Ed had that were just so relevant. My partners from Ontivity were just great. Cameron and Johnny, just great guys. And then, so those will be the folks that I really have a real shout out to that made a difference in my life. That's great. All right, Dwain, where can people go to learn more about you? Go to my LinkedIn page, B. Dwain Farley, and would appreciate it. Have enjoyed the time today. I love the stories. Thank you, Dwain. Thanks so much. My pleasure. My pleasure.
Thank you for listening to the Smart Business Revolution podcast with John Corcoran. Find out more at smartbusinessrevolution.com. And while you're there, sign up for our email list and join the revolution. Revolution. And be listening for the next episode of the Smart Business Revolution podcast.